Call the meeting to order. Mrs. Weber, please take the roll.
Mr. Malik.
Here.
Mrs. Bitter is absent. Mr. Comerford.
Here.
Dr. Studer.
Here.
And Mrs. Weiss.
Here.
Need a motion to go into executive session per ORC 121.22 G1, employment, compensation, and discipline of a public employee, official, or regulated individual.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mr. Malik.
Aye.
And Mr. Comerford.
Aye. We'll now go into executive session with the public portion of our meeting starting at 7 p.m. Let's start the public portion of our meeting. The board started the meeting at 6:30 and went into executive session, and we're now ready to begin our regular meeting. So if you could please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we start tonight's meeting, I want to remind everybody that we use our mission and vision to guide our actions and what we do for the district. So I want to take a minute to go over the mission and vision. Our mission is to cultivate a culture of academic excellence through inclusion and innovative learning opportunities for the whole child. And our vision is to empower all learners to reach their full potential in a globally competitive world. That, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda, which includes addendum Superintendent Agenda 7, 16, 17, 18, and Personnel Consent Agenda 1M and 3A.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
And Mr. Malik.
Aye. The agenda is approved. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
And Mr. Malik.
Aye, minutes are approved. Mrs. Weber, if you could give us a brief overview of the protocol.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Welcome, everyone. This is a great crowd this evening. I probably should have thought about coming to meeting. But thank you so much for all of you who are here with us this evening in person. And we also want to thank all of you who are attending our meeting virtually this evening. For those of you who are attending virtually, you can find the agenda for tonight's meeting out on our district website on the Board of Education page. The minutes that we just approved will be posted there as well. We may have some folks that are out in our virtual audience who would like to participate in public participation. We do have a new moderator this evening, Mr. Christian Long, who is our new Director of Technology. If you have a request from the virtual audience to participate in public participation, we ask that you send that request to his email at longc@sycamoreschools.org. So I believe that is it. Oh, and one other thing I would note is that we do have a chat feature. However, I would ask that those of you who are the virtual audience, please don't use that for public comment. We ask that you use that only if there are technical difficulties, just to make us aware if there's anything that we need to do to make sure you can all hear and see us here. So I think that's it, Mr. Malik.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, Mr. Lewis, I will turn it over to you for our special recognition.
Yes, it's always great to not only get to go see these young men get a proclamation at the city of Montgomery, but now we get a chance to recognize them because they've had busy summers. So unfortunately, not all of them could be here. And certainly we're sorry that their coach can't be with them. So he's not feeling very well. So, it is with great pleasure and honor that we get to recognize our tennis team as state champions once again for 2022. They had an extremely successful season. Why don't you guys come on up? I know you're not gonna. You know what? Instead of me talking about your season, Because I remember you did such a great job talking about your season at City of Montgomery. I'm gonna let one of you talk about your season. How about that? Yeah. You guys want to move over here a little bit? Just so-
Oh, yeah.
That's great, right there. Perfect. One of you want to talk about your season and tell us what was the, obviously about the pinnacle of the high point, getting to the state championship.
Yeah, well, I think coming to the season, there's Mason, who's won the state championship many years before this. So coming into the season, we knew it'd be a tough fight. And we kind of worked our way up to that moment, preparing for our state team match against Mason. We won the GMC tournament, and we also won Coach's Classic, which is really big for all of us. And those were against Mason as well. So they were like it was kind of like a,
like building up towards our state championship,
yeah.
which is, the one that we really care about the most. And it's maybe like the GMC was important, obviously, but the state championship is something that we can like hold with us for our entire lives. It's just, that's when the beginning of the season, we talk about goals, and that was obviously the ultimate goal. And so we built up to that the whole season. So we were happy when we were finally able to go to Columbus and win it. So yeah.
Coach Teets, any thoughts? Because I think the community should also hear about what were the scores of those matches leading up to that state title.
These guys really did well, and there were a lot of 3-0 scores in those matches because they just on all 5 courts that they just did a fantastic job. And in the state team tournament, you stop when one team gets to 3, so that's why the scores were 3-0 instead of 3-2, 3-4-1, whatever. So, but those were outstanding. And these guys mentioned the Mason match, which obviously was huge for us. And then they did such a good job of not letting down when we made it up to the Final Four, because that was a big emotional hurdle to get past Mason. And they really played, I feel like they played as well as they possibly could up in the Final Four. So they really finished strong. And one thing I wanted to mention to the board members is I think you guys can be so proud of these guys, not just because of what they did by winning the state championship, but they also did something that's pretty rare. They were voted by the officials as the sportsmanship winners. And that is a rare thing, because normally the officials like to share the awards, with other schools that maybe don't get all the prizes. But they were so impressed with how these guys handled themselves throughout the weekend that they also gave them the sportsmanship award. So I know personally as a coach, I was extremely proud. And I think the whole district has a reason to be proud of how they handled themselves throughout. So pretty exciting.
As I speak on behalf of the entire district, the administrators, the teachers, the staff members, we are so proud of you, not only because you represent us athletically, but you also represent the district from a sportsmanship standpoint. It is huge when we know that our students are out there showing the quality and the high expectations that we have for our students and for our staff. But you represented us well, and you dominate. Let's just be honest, Coach. They dominated the state tournament. So congratulations again. I don't know if any board members have anything to
I
say.
was just gonna ask if you could each introduce yourselves and then maybe what year you're going to be in school next year. And if there's others who were not able to be here, it would be great if we could recognize them as well. So I know particularly some of your recent graduates are here this evening. So.
Yeah, I'm Nicholas Chu, and I'm going to be a junior next year.
I'm Arjun Rajagopal, and I'm going to be a junior.
I'm Kevin Dong, I just graduated, and me and Mark Karev, who's also just graduated, we're the 2 captains of our team.
I'm Nick Myers. I'm going to be a junior next year.
And for those who weren't here, there was Drew Koda, he was a sophomore, Kyle Friedrich, also, I guess they're gonna be juniors now. Yeah, there's Drew Koda, who's gonna be a junior, Kyle Friedrich's gonna be a junior, Chad Miller just graduated, he's gonna play tennis at Northwestern, and Andrew Wittenbaum, who's also gonna be a junior.
That's gonna get
Junior
people
lady
back.
team.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well done, congratulations.
won't hurt our feelings if you have other things that you need. But you're welcome to stay. Hey, stay as long as you want.
If I could real quick, I wanted to thank the board for honoring the players. That is a very nice gesture to have them, even though they all couldn't make it. We really appreciate you acknowledging them. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.
Take care of yourself, Coach.
However, Mr. Long, any public participation? Okay. Mr. Weber, or Mr. Lewis, we'll turn it over to you. My apologies to both of you, to turn to make our next two exciting introductions.
Yeah, so Mr. Mino, if you want to come front and center so everybody can see you.
I have to stand this way, right?
Yeah, so you don't block.
Sorry.
But we are absolutely excited to announce Jay Mino, and I know it's hard to announce it when, basically as soon as you return from vacation, we throw him right in there and say, get to work. But Mr. Mino has been selected to lead our intermediate building, and obviously he is a familiar face to many because he has spent the last 5 years leading in that building and providing just a great atmosphere for students and staff to work and attend school. So, what he impressed the team with is his ability to collaborate and seeing the big picture and understanding how the intermediate building is really a nexus between the upper grades and the lower grades, and understanding how critical that part is and that part that they play in that building. So he was a unanimous choice, not only from the district leaders, but the other building leaders that participated, and especially the staff. I think they were thankful in a time period where, there's some uneasiness when there's change, but Jay brings stability. He brings extreme amount of knowledge to the building, and he has some great ideas about what he wants to do to help that building continue to move forward with some of the great initiatives that they're doing. So he served on our strategic planning team. He served on the Safe and Secure Schools Committee. He really helped design that school building to the point where I remember last year, we were in a lot of the color selections. And I mean, Jay was critical and like, no, I don't like that. Let's get this over here. Let's move this section over here. And, I think when you get to see the finished product, he has a knack for that kind of work. So
HD2D.
So Mr. Mino also has great experience. He's been an assistant principal at a middle school. Prior to being here, he spent 17 plus years in the classroom. And I know that's something that we value from our administrators. And probably the final thing I'll say about Jay is when we offered him the job, by the way, he interviewed for his final interview at 2 airports. He was getting ready to head out for a trip with his family, an unreal trip to Glacier National Park. And that's been a frequent thing for he and his family to hit national parks. And he interviewed from 1 airport and said, guys, I have to board this plane in 2 minutes. And then we got him back on for the rest of his interview at the end of the day. So it shows tremendous flexibility. But when I talked to Jay about, taking on this role, not only was it the excitement, but it was always about students. It was always about his impact on students and on staff and what he could bring to the team and really just being able to grow that building and move into that brand new building in a new role. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce our new intermediate school principal, Jay Mino. Any comments?
I mean, I didn't want to say title, so I don't really know. I have something that predecessors have. First of all, thank you to Mr. Lewis and the district office, as well as the board, for the trust that you're placing in me to lead that building. It's a fantastic opportunity. I don't take it lightly, and I know it's a huge responsibility that to be in this community and the expectation, and I will do everything I can to live up to that. I want to publicly thank my family. They're super supportive and important to me, along with my faith. Those are the 2 most important things to me. They've always been there right with me. I mentioned this before, but my wife is a 13-year Sycamore grad, attendee and graduate, so she indoctrinated me early on. That this should be my final destination, and regrettably, I have to admit she's right, as always. So it's fantastic, and most importantly, I see former students and stuff sitting here, which is really cool as they're older, but most important is the trust that the students and staff have placed in me. That's why we do what we do, and I'm super excited to continue all the things that have been done already, build upon our traditions, and continue to see where we're going to fly. So super excited. I always sign off announcements yelling "Go Waves," so I'm not going to yell, but go Waves.
I would say you heard Mr. Mann mention, this is his dream job. It's just, he's been kind of, not to say that he was waiting around for Mr. Tudor to leave, but this really is his great band. It's what he wants to do. It's what he's passionate about. So he's excited. He said it a couple of times during the interview process. This is where I want to end my career, at this building and leaving this building. So I know that's appreciated by our students and our staff.
Welcome. As a parent who had 2 students recently go through school, watching your leadership both with in the building and your relationships with the students. I mean, this is a fantastic promotion for you and for the district to take over the leadership of that building. So while you had mentioned that expectations are high, so is our confidence in you. And we really think great things will come out of the Green School. So congratulations to you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And you can stay there. That way Janelle's not by herself. That's a good teammate. So it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce Janelle Shunk to you again. So, and why I say again is Mrs. Shunk was hired as an assistant principal for Sycamore High School. And, certainly we were excited about her filling in that role. But as we started working through our junior high process and, things did not work out maybe as planned. One thing I'll always think about when I have a leader reach out to me and say, if you need someone to step up and take on a challenge, I'm ready. And I love that about her, is that there is no challenge too big. There isn't anything that she's not ready to tackle. And, literally from the time that I said, my first instinct was, well, we're in the process, let's wait. And then when it fell apart, I'm like, you know what, you want the challenge, it's yours, let's go. Let's see what you can do. So she agreed to fill in as the interim principal candidate for the position, but I think she has a bigger vision of earning the role and making sure that the job is hers at the end of the year. So she comes to us with 4 years of administrative experience from Oak Hills, maybe a week to 2 at the high school, but at the end of the day, people that are passionate about kids always come through, and that's one of the things that she's passionate about, is making sure that junior high kids have a great experience, making sure that junior high kids have fun, but also valuing the expert voices of the veteran staff in that building that are ready to help her lead. And she's already gotten to see that through the first few days of just trying to get up to speed at the junior high. So we will make some decisions in January, but for right now, we are super excited for Janelle to take on this challenge of leading our team. She's jumped right in. She's working on filling an assistant principal role to complete that team. And, she also has to hire a secretary at some point. So, it's been a busy summer, but we are excited for Janelle, and we're excited for everything you bring to the table, Janelle. And we're excited, just your passion for kids, your passion for education, and the instructional leadership that you're going to bring to that building. So, congratulations.
As well for you trusting that I have the ability to do this. Leading with Tyler Meyer, who's already been introduced to the AP, our full intent is to come in and earn the trust of the staff. Whether I am in that position next year or not, I think that's going to be a really critical aspect of the first semester. And we want people to know that we're going to listen, that we aren't going to come in and rock the boat, and that we are still forward thinking, and that we still need to prepare to move into this new building. And so that's kind of our plan for the year of how we're going to tackle things, is just listen, earn some trust of the community, of the students, and certainly of our staff. And then also look toward new systems, right? Because we're going to need those as we move into the new building. So we are very excited just to build and learn and experience Sycamore. So thank you guys for that trust.
Congratulations.
So we will be working hard with those two leaders, making sure that they get tremendous amount of support from our district team, from some familiar faces. Mrs. Belfram is going to help out. It's been, I think, a huge help with Mrs. Shunk over at the junior high. That's, helping her get up to speed. Mrs. Belfram was just in that building 2 years ago. So really building that collaborative leadership model that we so believe in. Exciting times here at Sycamore, especially with new buildings coming online for these two leaders.
Moving on to superintendent's agenda, our first item is the Info Trust Innovation Lab analysis.
Sure. So I'll just give a quick introduction and then I'll let Pam take over because our partners at Info Trust have done a great job working with us and being a collaborative team to really do an analysis of our innovation lab and just to kind of paint the picture for our community and for our board team and our administrative team. We reached out to Info Trust and you may recall we did a innovation lab update in the fall. And really the driving force behind it was, are we measuring the correct things to determine whether or not the lab is being successful and looking at different metrics. And so I never felt like we could get over that hump of what are we measuring, what does success look like, and how does it define through some of the metrics that we were using. So talking with Info Trust and the owner and CEO of Info Trust, Alex, we serve on a board together at the UC Blue Ash College. So I just called him and said, hey, is this something that your company, being a data analytics company, can help us with? Is it something you'd be interested in doing? And I think they got excited about the project because it's so different than their normal work. They were very honest with me and said, if we don't feel like we're the right partner, we will certainly bring in some additional partners. But I think as they dug in, they felt like, we are the right partners for this work and we're happy to kind of walk this walk with you. So not only our partners from Info Trust, but some Innovation Lab team members, high school administrators, and district leaders partnered together. And also some partners from Learn 21 helping us dig through the data and provide it to Info Trust. We did a collaborative leadership model, but the work really rested with Info Trust to take our data and take all the information we can provide them and do the analysis of our data. So I will not steal any more of Pam's thunder. And Pam, if you don't mind introducing yourself and then the members of your team that participated, that would be fantastic.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Like Mr. Lewis said, my name is Pam Cashero. I lead the data science team at Info Trust. I am joined tonight by my colleagues David Ellig and Tricia Dokar. Info Trust is a global end-to-end digital analytics consultancy, data governance and technology company. We work with some of the largest brands in the world, and we're also regularly recognized as the best place to work and a fast-growing company. And we're also just down the street in Blue Ash, our main office. And in 2018, our founders started the Info Trust Foundation, which is a nonprofit that supports organizations that promote children and education. So that's kind of how we got pulled in and why we're here tonight. So I want to give a brief overview of the work that we did, beginning with kind of the why. So we were brought in to perform an independent analysis of the data from the students who participated in this innovation lab. And through our discussions with Mr. Lewis and the other administrators, we zeroed in on a particular research question that we would investigate. And that was, did participation in this innovation lab cause students to achieve differently on standardized tests compared to their peers in the control group? So based on this kind of guiding question that we would be answering, we chose to analyze the data in what's known as a quasi-experimental design, or a QE. And basically what that means is those are techniques that are designed to establish a causal relationship, so the effect of the program, but in a scenario where you didn't run a randomized controlled trial. So this was not a situation where, randomly assign students this innovation and some control. but more that reflects kind of generally what happens in the real world. So I'll provide a brief overview of the process that we followed. The first step, of course, was designing the analysis. So we had a number of decisions we needed to make regarding the analysis techniques we would use. So based on that research question, which techniques are appropriate for this scenario, and the data. What data would be used to measure student outcomes? What data will be taken into consideration as covariates or compounding factors that if we didn't consider would bias our results? So once we established that, we created a control group. So again, this was not a randomly controlled trial. What we did instead is we used an algorithmic process to find students who didn't participate in this innovation lab, but when we looked at them compared to the innovation students, those two groups closely resembled one another. And so we have techniques for kind of establishing what a good match looks like. Once we have our control and our treatment groups, we fit a statistical model to estimate the effect of this innovation program on students' outcomes measures. And then our last step of the process was we did obtain 2 independent reviews of our work, on our analysis and methodology, and then through that made some small revisions to our analysis based on that feedback. So those 2 reviewers were Dr. A. John Baylor, the chair of the statistics department at Miami University, and Dr. Abdul Malik Muhammad, a longtime educator and co-founder of the educational company Acrobat. So for our analysis, the data that we looked at primarily consisted of demographics, academic indicators, and standardized test scores for the class of 2022. And from that data, looking at prior to 9th grade, we used that for the creation of the control and treatment groups to again find that group that closely resembled this innovation students. And then we had to determine how would we measure academic outcomes. And so we landed on 4 measures that we would look at, which were the Algebra 1 air test score administered in 9th grade, the Biology air test score administered in 9th grade, English Language 1 air test score from 9th grade, and the ACT composite score. So 2 things I will mention here are we purposely chose standardized test scores because they were very objective measures. We would have a high level of confidence that all students would be tested in a consistent manner. But the second thing I want to call out is you may be wondering why we looked at 9th grade. And that is because for the class of 2022, we would have preferred to use air test scores from 10th grade, but their score testing was disrupted due to COVID that year. So for that reason, we looked at 9th grade, but if the district were to ever repeat this analysis, we would recommend looking at 10th grade instead. So finally, just an overview of our findings. So we did not find a statistically significant difference in achievement level across those 4 outcome measures. So specifically for ACT composite, Algebra 1, and English, there was no statistically significant difference in the scores for the Synovation Lab students and those in the control group. For biology, we did see a statistically significant difference, where the Synovation students scored 16.96 points lower. However, that difference was not enough to change their achievement level, which from our discussions with the district was of utmost importance. So our findings here would, we did not detect anything that would suggest that participation in Synovation caused an adverse effect on student outcomes. So with that being said, I will pause there, and if there are any questions or comments, happy to take those.
I have a couple of questions. Did you look at any comparisons of growth in students from 9th grade to 11th grade testing or across to see what the growth might have been in a Syn Lab student versus a traditional classroom student to compare those to each other?
So can you get a little more specific?
So if you took an air test in, or an ACT, say you took it in 9th grade, and then you repeated it in 11th grade, did you try to compare those kind of groups between those 2 scores for a sim lab kid versus a traditional classroom kid?
We do not employ any, I think what you're referring to is what would be called like a longitudinal type of technique. We do not use any sort of longitudinal techniques in this part.
Okay, next question I have is, how would you like to see the soft skills that kids learn in this innovation lab, such as time management, task completion, confidence changes, et cetera? How would you need those to be, the qualitative data to be quantified so you could use it in a study?
That is a great question. I can speak to it from kind of the criteria that we use for evaluating outcome measures, but obviously everyone else wants to chime in from a more educational perspective. We did have a number of criteria that we looked at before we aligned on these 4 outcome measures. And one of the key ones was, we had mentioned in the creation of that control group, we needed to establish what's called baseline equivalence. So are those 2 groups similar enough that we can compare? Are they similar enough in 8th grade that we can reasonably compare them later? So those soft skills, you would need not only an objective measure, after Synovation, we would need a measure prior to high school that we would feel confident establishes baseline equivalence there too. So there are a number of considerations, as well as just kind of like the consistency and how it's evaluated. You wouldn't want any measures that are what are called over-aligned with the treatment. So if students are learning particular skills in Synovation that they might not be learning in a different curriculum, you want to be over-tailored to those Synovation skills as well. So there are a number of considerations there.
Okay, but you can statistically control for some of those too.
So if you can check all of those criteria, then yes.
But I think it's worth saying too that it's not saying that soft skills are not taught in the traditional model either. Let's not say that. I had a question about the limitation of propensity score matching. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes, so I believe what you're referring to is that when you use a propensity score for matching purposes, what you're essentially doing is you're kind of boiling down a number of different characteristics or covariates into a single measure, right? You're summarizing them. So that is a very commonly used technique, but it is a summary, right? So there is some information that's lost through that summary process. One of the things that we specifically did to address that is we did use what's referred to as exact matching on some covariates that we deemed as being very important, so that if there was something like an 8th grade math test, not math test,
Well, I'm just looking at I'm looking at one of your tables. So you're saying like the exact matching where the gender, the ethnicity, and if they're a gifted student, as an example.
Yes, that was a big
So the other things that are propensity score matching are play a lesser role in terms of making that match between the control and.
I would say we're matching more precisely on those exact ones, but we also, there's important value in keeping those other ones in the equation, right? But given, it would not have been feasible to exact match on everything, so we have to prioritize.
So one other question about, and I appreciate you saying the piece about, because when I saw that you just looked at 9th grade, three air tests in 9th grade, that's having 1 year in the innovation lab. But in terms of looking at the ACT composite score, did you look at the students that are in this innovation lab? What qualifies them as being in this innovation lab in terms of classes that they're taking outside of this innovation lab? What makes them designated as a Synovation Lab student? Meaning that if you have a student who's in this innovation lab for a couple subjects, but they go out for 4 AP classes, are they still considered an Synovation Lab student? Or are they considered a traditional student in the analysis?
So if they had participated in Synovation in 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, we would have considered them in our analysis of ACT data. We did not get to the granularity of how many classes they were in the lab out of their school day.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank you.
I want to first and foremost say thank you for the analysis and the work of the team. I really appreciate a data-based approach and really value the information you shared with us. My question is, you mentioned if we do this again, And it seems to me that as we continue with this innovation lab, it would be good to do this again. And what frequency would you recommend that we redo this analysis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did have a lot of learnings just through the process, and we did put thought into kind of establishing, well, if you were to repeat this going forward, kind of what can we do now to set a good precedent for that down the road? We did have some discussions of some different options. You could, of course, look at it for each class and rerun it every year. But I do think there's also the opportunity. The sample sizes were not enormous. So I think there's also the opportunity, once COVID data is kind of out of everyone's system, that you could do some aggregation possibly across a couple of different years. Just, as a statistician, larger sample sizes are generally preferred. So, perhaps a regular cadence of every 2 or 3 years, I think would also be possible.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well. I want to make a couple comments and then I have a question. Number one, it hasn't been mentioned that you guys did this at no charge to the district, so we greatly appreciate that. And we've struggled as a district to really come up with a way to look at data to determine whether or not this innovation lab has been successful. It is the responsibility of the administration and the board for any new program that we put in, pilot program, or any new opportunities we have, to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the kids ultimately. So I appreciate the independent professional look at the data. It's been very helpful for me. I think one of the outcomes of this innovation lab is to prepare the kids for the next chapter in life, no matter what that is. Do you see any way you could track students farther on, or what you would look at to see what success looks like when they leave our buildings?
That is a very interesting question, and truthfully not something I had considered. Actually, I may defer, because again,
No, you can.
we're outsiders here a little bit, right?
Right,
So
right.
in terms of the type of data that might be collected at the college level, I just haven't really worked with that personally. So I hear you, it would be great to get outcomes, if students go on to post-secondary and kind of their graduation rate and stuff like that. But I would certainly defer if any of my colleagues would like to speak to that.
It's just a question.
I have one more quick question on the study. Did you consider parent education level and socioeconomic status as something to control for?
We discussed it. We were not able to obtain that data. It was not able to be shared with us.
I would say through census, you could have gotten that with US government. The data is available. Not for the students, but for the family level, it's available to the US Census.
For that particular student, I don't think we would give that information. And in the census data, she wouldn't.
Yeah, they don't
She
have
doesn't know the
names.
name of
Yeah,
the student.
yeah, that's one thing I was going to mention. This was all anonymous too. There were not names of students attached with data. So I don't want people thinking that we were, giving student data out to independent companies. It was all.
We had ID numbers.
Well, and I think it's important to know for our community, like InfoTrust signed a
Yes.
confidentiality agreement. There were multiple layers between, because they needed protection to do the study. We needed protection to make sure we don't release any information outside the district. So again, it was a great partnership, and you and David, Trish, your team, like, so appreciative of everything you did. I'm excited because I think where Bill's moving into kind of a special assignment role this year to work with data, I think and they're in Blue Ash, we can go visit. I did not get to go visit, everybody else got to go visit, but I want to go to their office because from the team that came back, they just said, it's a phenomenal work environment. It's a phenomenal place that they build culture. And the day, I don't know if it's the day they went or that you guys had just finished or like company-wide, everyone came and it was like 100+ people from around the world that were flown into Cincinnati to visit the Blue Ash office. So I think, and Alex is not only the CEO of their company, he's a parent in our district. He has no tie to this innovation lab or to the high school at all. He has young children. But he is so passionate about education and students and helping us and supporting us, that I think it can be a long-term partnership that he values. So I'm excited to learn more from them of how we can better fine tune some of our data processes. And Bill's gonna be working hard on trying to find a data warehouse and making some decisions around how we can better utilize our data. And I have a feeling we'll have some friends, some advisors, if we maybe give them free lunch, they might help advise us on that. So we just so appreciative, and I can't say thank you enough, because I know, and I think it's important for you all to get a picture of how much time they spent on this. It was every week. Dr. Warren, I'm looking at you. It was every week for at least several months that we met, and it was, at least an hour, if not more, but very efficient meetings, Pam. So to learn more from you on that. But, just an exciting adventure. And, data is not always an exciting thing to talk about, but watching these individuals talk about it, they got you excited about the work. So, and Dr. Warren and Mr. Cole and Steve Seafried deserve a lot of credit, because they were kind of the key people, along with Mrs. Wagner and Mrs. Tompkins, that really did a lot of this work alongside InfoTrust. So.
Thank you so much.
Great,
Thank you.
Never mind. It was already addressed. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is master facility plan.
I was just gonna say, I'm so excited to have so many students and parents here this evening. I don't know if, I appreciate y'all being here, that's super comfortable. If you're at the point where if you'd like to stay, that would be great. But if you have other exciting things to do tonight. Thank you. You're right. How are you doing?
Okay. Yeah. Now we'll move on to master facility.
I guess I don't need an introduction. It's all good. So, Mr. President, members of the board, again, as always, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share the projects that are happening around the district. I always love showing this slide because it just gives an overview of the amount of work that's happening across the district and the excitement for so many students. And I was thinking the other day, that I wish I could have a number that would articulate the total number of students that are impacted by the construction that's happening. And I have to believe it's really high. A high percentage of the students within our community that are going to feel the touch some way, shape, or form of the work that's going on. And so as we've kind of talked the last few meetings, I want to highlight EH Green, because that's the school that's going to be opening soon enough. So we can move to the next slide. There we go. Just some pictures there for you. Want to talk a little bit about, now that we are in the throe of getting this open, what is some of that transition time going to look like? And so tomorrow is a big day for us. This is going to hit our phase 2 temporary occupancy. It's what they call life safety. And so we cannot move forward past tomorrow if we don't pass our life safety, meaning our plan of moving boxes in and people in is dependent on getting that through. We have a lot of confidence that things will work out well. We have a great relationship with our local fire departments, local police departments. We've been in constant communication and contact with them. So we're hopeful things look really good. If everything goes well tomorrow, our plan is to do somewhat of what we call kind of an internal punch list of some of the items over there to make sure that we're ready, meaning cleaning, some of the last minute things we've addressed that we need to look for. And then our hope is that on Monday, we start to move some of our office staff over to EH Green to start working out of the space. So a couple things, we have furniture delivery in the complete admin classrooms. That is done. There's equipment's over there. I wish Mr. Mina was here. His new office is all set up. Unfortunately, he didn't get to design it, but he's going to move in and love it. And so all that is all set over there. Again, there are little things that we still need to do. Just like if you're to move into a new house, you will be working on things over the course of the next 6 months. I mentioned the life safety internet connection is live. So thank you to our technology team. So just to kind of give you a little perspective on that, that is not part of kind of the master facility piece of the bond. They do the wiring, but we have to go in, put our access points, get our switches and get everything going. So our team has been over there doing their best to get that set up. So we have internet connection, and as you know, you can't have school without internet. So demo the existing building. If you've driven down Aldine, you'll see that it is coming down quick. We're about 80%. While the building is down, that's just the first piece. The big work that happens now is chiseling the foundations out of the ground. And then from there, what we like to call Mount Hagwa, the back of the property, it's that big mound of dirt that our neighbors are anxiously waiting to go away. We'll start to infill the property as we move out a lot of the existing building. And then I also want to mention, because I think we often forget, or at least I forget, not only is this a new build, but it's a renovation as well. And so area D, the new area, which is the renovated old cafeteria to the music suite, is ongoing. Framing is up. The gyms are being renovated. And so that space looks significantly behind the rest, but we're going to continue to get to the point where we feel comfortable at the start of the year. That's going to be kind of the sliding into home type. It's going to be tight on that one. The rest of the building, we're feeling really confident about getting our teachers in as early as we can. I'm not going to give you a date because I don't want it broadcast, but I will tell you that we're feeling way more confident than we were probably about 4 months ago, so that they can start getting into their spaces and things like that. I am happy anytime any of you would want to walk around the building and see it. I know I haven't been here hardly, but a blink of the eye with all of this project. I wasn't here during the planning phases or any of that. I've just seen it come out of the ground, but I do feel like a proud dad as you walk through that and go, wow, like we did this, like it's actually coming together. For our community, I'm sure if you drive by, it does not look nearly complete. I promise you it does look complete. It just doesn't look like it from the road. So we're getting there.
A lot of parking still to go.
Yeah, a lot of parking still to go, but we're making great headway, and it's a phenomenal space. Any questions about Green before I move on?
So no big concerns on students showing up?
We do not have concerns about that at the moment. Like I said, I think that what we need to do is expectations set to our staff and to our students in our community. If we're all with the mindset that we're going to go in and this thing's going to be 100% buttoned up, I think we're going to be a little disappointed. At the same rate, we will be at the place where we are confident that teachers and students can be in the building, they can learn, the spaces will look finished, but there's still going to be construction going on, there's movement on the property. There will be times that things won't work. And we will say, well, but it's a new building, why is it not working? We just have to work through that stuff. We saw that at Sims, we're gonna see it at the junior high, we see it at the high school, but we'll get there. So,
And I think it's important to remind people, our substantial completion date is not till November.
correct.
So he's right. There's going to be a few bumps and headaches along the way, but it's brand new, so just enjoy it.
And then we'll see.
Mr. Mathis
I'm excited.
deserves a lot of credit because
He does.
he's lived through both places and he's gonna keep this place looking top notch for years to come, so.
And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Mathis, and this is totally off script. But yesterday, I'm out in our containers in the upper lot of DO. We have 12 of them up there that are housing all the wonderful stuff from EH Green. And I'm opening these containers, rooting through because I have to find a file. And he's driving by and he just looks at me and I said, he's like, do you need, yes, I need help. And he knew pretty much, he knew exactly
Narrowed
which
it down.
container I needed to go to. Now, we weren't able to get the file, but that man's help was incredible to a man wearing a tie and trying to root through the container. There are some people that might have locked me in that container.
Not yet.
But yeah, good stuff. That's great.
Great.
Have they started hauling anything away yet, or that's still to come?
From the demolition.
Demolition,
Yeah, they have. They started kind of slowly making their way. We are working really hard to do this in a very efficient manner.
but also be good, excuse me, good neighbors as well. We want to control the dust. We want to make sure we're controlling vibrations. We have vibration monitors set up around the properties. And so the reason it may look slower to most people is because we're just trying to be methodical about it. Yeah. All right, so moving on, the multi-use field updates here. If you have driven by the high school, it is incredible how things are coming out of the ground. And this is actually, we would have to take a drone photo pretty much every day to keep up with the work. These are the last ones that SHP sent us, but they're actually, we have the visitor stands and the home stands that are going up. And in fact, the trusses are going up on the concession stand here soon. Today we got the shingle colors and everything picked out for everything. So the progress there is significant. I will say, just because, again, trying to be as transparent as possible, the amount of rain that we got in May, while we still remain on target, we are inching very close to that first game. We failed 2 proof rolls on the field for soil. And so a lot of that work has to do with letting that soil dry to compact it again. It's in the southwest corner, I believe, of the field. Again, we're in direct relationship with Moats to make sure we can get that field, but I do want to throw that out. The other thing that we're running kind of a tight frame onto is getting fiber on the property. We have to wait till conduits run. So there are a few things that we remain cautious about, but overall, the rest of the site development and everything that's happening out there seems to be on target. So thank you to HGC for kind of just staying on top of that and helping us manage a lot of moving pieces and personalities out on that work site as well.
I'll be really happy the day we can stop talking about soil.
Well, we still have to take down 2 buildings, so I would like to say it's done, but I'm not willing to commit to that.
And if you, we were talking about drone photos, if you don't follow Aviator Vision.
That's right.
On Twitter.
No.
Noah is sitting right here. Noah does those great shots and videos that, and he does a lot of phenomenal things around the school that really help us with communications and getting the student voice out there. So if you don't follow Aviator Vision on Twitter, you should, because he puts a lot of good information out there.
I was out there the other day and you're getting the drone out. So
Yeah, I was there today as well.
New shots, yeah.
So he does, someone does drone shot it every day.
I know, right?
That's on Twitter. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then last, kind of give you updates on junior high. Love this picture. Things are tying together. So you're looking right now at the building, obviously the theater on the right. On the right in the back there is our auxiliary gym, our main gym, and then kind of the health wrestling there in the middle. The front you're looking at is the main entrance of the building, and you'll see that it slopes down. So you'll actually enter into the front, and then the bottom part there's the cafeteria, the top part our music rooms and other areas. Kind of the arts wing, right? And academic areas in the back. And so in fact, this is out of date as well, because they've actually started building up the second tier of the theater seats coming out of there. It is absolutely breathtaking. In fact, it was fun because I was on the other side of 126 the other day for a meeting, bizarre, but walking across the pedestrian bridge there, and to see the junior high kind of above 126 looking at it, it's just beautiful. And I think that once we tear down the old building, have that full kind of area complete, it'll look impressive from 71 and Ronald Cross County going through there. But a couple things here, they're finishing up the brick veneer and the CMU walls and a lot of those different elevations. Like I said, this is a little outdated. They've been moving forward with that. The translucent panels on the back of the gym are going in. So in the main gym, they're not glass. There's these really cool panels that kind of wrap around it. It's a kind of an architectural design. They're working on the drywall install in the academic area. So a lot of what the academic area is going to start resembling is what we saw about 2 months ago at Gray. Going to start doing some base painting, things like that in those areas. Underground utility installations underway. So you'll notice that there's a lot of development happening by the maintenance building, the old transportation, a lot of that site development for where the tennis courts are going to go. Those will go north of the field. Mentioned the auditorium, and then we're going to start seeing some demolition at the site on 7/18. They're gonna start removing the locker rooms there. What I'll mention about the demolition is we are working hard to be strategic to get as much demolition done as we can throughout the year. That doesn't mean we're gonna be doing it in the fall or winter, but as we approach the spring and we're looking at occupancy early for the junior high, there may be potential to move sections of the junior high, some classes into the new space to be able to take down some of the old space. The reason we want to do that is capitalize on the time that we have for demolition, so we're not pushing back start of school because of that. As I mentioned in many, many conversations, this is the tightest spot we have for construction. There's not a lot of movement, room, so we've got to get that building done to put the new lots in, to get the bus turnaround. And in the midst of all that, working with the Cooper Road Bridge that's going to be being worked on the same summer. So there's a lot going on, but you know, we do hard things here in Sycamore, so I think we can tackle this. I think that is all the updates I have for you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Item number 3, I need a motion for the change order of Sycamore High School exterior athletics early site package GMP 3A and campus parking early site package 3B.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bell, just the essence of time, we won't make any comments unless you have questions.
Any
I
questions?
do have one question, I do have one comment on this.
Except for one comment.
I did want to point out, this is actually on numbers 3 and 4. These are both impacting our campus parking as well as the phase 1 of the stadium. Between the two of them, you would see that the one was about $9,700 over budget on the campus parking. Of the 1.2 million that was allocated for that from the board. And then on the phase 1 of the stadium, about $82,000, probably over the 5.9 initial budget on those two.
I mean, I do have a question on number 4. I'll just ask now. I'm sorry to move on. Can you just talk a little bit about the city of Montgomery zoning requirements that have cost us almost $100,000?
Yeah. So when I first saw that come through, I did a lot of digging because I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a miss somewhere. And so as we talked to the city and as we talked to our architectural firm to better understand where this shift in the requirements came, the project moved significantly fast. So it wasn't necessarily a miss on either end. It was, we had to submit, we had to move with these drawings. These are the reductions in the lighting that needed to happen. The other thing that came in there too was when we started having conversations around the change in where the access road was going to be, was currently at the south of the stadium, but that needed to be shifted to the north part, do some work, road configuration work for the future. That's where we then had to address the current lighting that was there and make some shifts. And so this is a result, this change order is a result, yes, of code, but honestly, it's just something that we had to catch up with the code that was out there from the original design set.
Why were we not aware of the code in the original design?
We were aware of the code in the original design, but the design was set and I'm trying to answer your question. We were aware, we knew, we were told, but the design set occurred after, it went out after we had met with the city. We did digging on this.
Can you say that again? Yeah.
So when we were moving forward with all the plans and everything for the site, for the athletic facility, things were moving quick. We met with the city to get approval for our signage and our signs and our lights and everything like that. We had already kind of submitted the plans to move forward prior to that conversation. And when they were set, they never got shifted to HGC. So while it wasn't necessarily a miss, it was a movement of processes and plans in different areas. And so when they HGC went to go make the orders and did everything, they weren't to the spec of what should have been designed based on the city. I met with Kevin Cheezar from the city to better understand when this was notified and then working with our architects to understand where things shifted. And so that was kind of how that all was missed as it moved forward.
So why was our architecture partner not aware of the zoning requirements when they designed the original scope.
I feel like this is kind of like Groundhog Day again. With the architect, I mean, did we not have something similar to this in a different situation where, I mean, I think Mrs. Weber just mentioned where we're off now by, what was it, 45,000?
41,000.
But what was the other one?
The first one was 9,700.
Mr. Lowe, do you mind? I just want to ask.
Sure.
Was it clear, was it requirements that the city of Montgomery required us to do and changed? Is that why the change happened? Like, because I know we went to zoning meetings and got approval.
Correct.
So were these changes after that?
Correct.
That they're requiring of us that weren't known to our architect or?
That's what I wanted to dig. It's my understanding that they were known, but when the release of the plans were out, it was after the point of approval, which is why the change needs to happen.
I don't know that it's just the architect that deserves blame, is what the reason I asked that question. It seems like architect, construction, and city probably deserve a little equal right there.
Yeah, I bet, I was at the meeting. I don't recall requirements from the city to change the lighting that was presented to them. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's where I'm struggling with of where this changed.
Brad, maybe to help the board, maybe if you could send them a summary
I have one.
updated of maybe information that.
That obviously needs to be done because we need to move forward.
Sure.
I have communication because I was going back and forth with Kevin Cheeser with the city of Montgomery and with SHB. So I've got communication I can put together for you.
I just have a clarification question
Okay.
because I want to make sure if I heard it in this way, was it correct or incorrect?
Okay.
I thought you mentioned the access road is moving locations south of the stadium to a different point. Was it a longer road now required, or did the access road not change?
There was an access road that existed at the bottom of the stadium property that went over to the Abe's lot. Is that what they called it? So when you came off of Cornell, there was an existing road that went that way. In order to accommodate future road work on Cornell, we were asked to be able to move and shift that northward, to put that north drive in, which you have seen. We got rid of the retaining wall, moved that north drive. That is kind of our fire ambulance road. That road then needed new lighting to go into it that didn't currently exist.
So that was what I was trying to get at. Was it the movement of the road that ultimately caused the more lighting
Correct.
required?
Yes,
But that's just a piece of this.
that's a piece of that.
And who required the road?
That's,
The movement of the road.
there was no requirement for us to move the road. The reason that the road was moved is because it made sense to do it as part of the bigger site development rather than doing something and tearing up later. I'm having a hard time because I can't necessarily speak to the city's plans on that, on Cornell. But a lot of that had to do when we needed to accommodate future work in that area. And what would happen is if that access drive were there and we were to build that retaining wall, it would mostly all be torn out. So we made the decision that it was best at that moment to do the work on our site to move that drive north. Yeah.
And it sounds like in the end, what it's going to do is improve site circulation and
One-
the area plus traffic flow on Cornell Road, which all of us who have driven that way in the morning and the afternoon, so that's really important.
And if you remember, part of the site development plan, we had money earmarked to put a turn lane in on Cornell. Because of future potential road work, we have been working with the city of Montgomery to say, hey, is this the best option right now? Because I'll be very transparent with you, that money came back, that number came back about $110,000 higher than what we had budgeted and allocated. And it did make no sense for us to move forward with that. And so having communication with the city to be able to say, hey, let's put a pause on that. The reason that we were able to really influence that decision to be able to put a pause is because of the work that we've done internally to increase site circulation on the property in general. We're going to be able to move more cars on the property. We're going to have more efficient processes to move drop off buses, things like that. That's going to decrease the overall traffic flow on Cornell. Now, will it be 100% better? No, but it's going to help it out. I am going to consolidate in a better articulate way what I tried to tell you in an email based on other emails I've received.
And so these overages, where are they coming from? How are we paying for this in terms of what contingency pot is this coming from?
At this point, based on the site circulation, that could potentially come from contingency high school plan. Stadium, I think that's something we're gonna have to determine whether we will continue to look at additional private funding and finding additional dollars there, or if there might be other ways that could be funded.
Because here's kind of my broader concern about this, is that while I appreciate good traffic flow, right? I want to be good neighbors, obviously, to our neighbors on Cornell Road. You know, my concern is that when we start dipping into the contingency for things like this, $40,000, $100,000, that there's other programs that for example, in the high school program that are not going to be funded because we're paying for $100,000 to improve the access road, or we're doing lighting on that road. And, you know, for me, that, I don't want to say that takes away from the mission, but if that's going to prevent us from having something in our music program or something in our arts program or something in our, you know, they're all choices. And so at what point do we feel like these contingencies are going to be more, I don't want to say under control, but it kind of seems like they're hitting us again. And we don't have an unlimited contingency.
Yeah. I can just tell you from my standpoint, and Beth and I work together every day. I feel like we have these conversations around priorities and numbers and things like that, protecting academics. The athletic facility is a very difficult one for us to get a hold of right now. Partly in the phase of where it's at in construction related to some of the other projects, but just really having that stress and that burden of knowing that finite number. When it comes to contingencies, we continue to hold really, really hard on no more change order. Like, we have got to bring those down. I mean, I feel like against most of our projects, all of our projects are doing that. There are things out of our control that we're going to continue to face, whether it's soil or other things that come up. The other thing is that, and Ms. Weber and I were talking about this today, is that the escalation of cost is just, I know nobody wants to hear it, but man, it is just brutal too. Like, things that we're having to navigate and spend that weren't this way about a year ago, and how do we manage that in the bucket of money that we have, making all these critical decisions. So I don't have a pointed answer for you other than the fact that we wear this burden a lot and we take it very seriously. And we do want to protect academics the best we can. Do I want to spend money on more dirt? No, you know.
But I would also say though, like, understanding, I appreciate what you're saying about it being choice, but you know, it's going to be difficult for me as a board member to keep voting yes and yes and yes on all these contingencies, to tap into the contingencies for, let's just call it the kind of the sports, you know, plan for soil, for lighting, for all these other things, when we don't know how that's impacting academics, do we?
Well, I would say the good news is we bid those GMPs for the building and the structure and the materials long ago. So those aren't getting hit with the inflationary costs of all the things that we didn't bid because we didn't have the money in the bank to bid it.
But I feel
So
uncomfortable,
I feel like we're
right?
protecting, those are protected because we were already, I think, done with those decisions. Now it's just, you know, I know we've made some tough decisions inside the building about furniture, and luckily we kept a good furniture cycle, so we were able to reduce some furniture, but still purchase some other things inside the building to make sure. I think what you want to make sure is that we're not reducing our programming dollars for a roadway with some lights.
All right, because I think,
And I think
there have been some areas in programming that have had to really scale back their wants or their wishes And I am concerned when we say things like, we're gonna have to just find the money through private funding. That, to me, is not a plan. Right? I mean, I just feel like I feel like it's not as secure as I would want it to be. Let's just say that.
Any additional comments from the board?
On item number 3.
On item number 3, which
No damage catch basin.
Mrs. Weber, would you please call the roll for item number
Mr. Comer,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. And Mr. Allen.
3? Aye, motion passes. I apologize. I'm the one who went to item number 4. Now I need a motion for item number 4, change order for Sycamore High School Stadium Phase 1 completion project, GMP 3C, and campus parking lights, GMP 3D.
So moved.
Any additional questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
And Mr. Allen.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for item number 5, change order Sycamore Junior High School construction.
So, second.
Any questions from the board on this one? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
And Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for item number 6, resolution approving ground lease between Reed Hartman Rooms Development LLC and Sycamore Community School District Transportation Facility.
So moved.
Second.
I do think it's exciting that
I was
we're
gonna say, can
getting
we
ready
celebrate
to
this one?
move forward on the transportation facility. It is the ground lease. We'll be bringing back, I believe, results of the competitive bidding, second meeting in August.
Yeah, I think it's exciting for those of us that have been on the board for a while. We have now, I think, maybe 10 or 12 locations we thought we might be able to secure. And we were glad, like Mrs. Weiss said, we were close many times, but here we are with a lease. And obviously this has been well vetted by our legal attorneys.
Yes.
Many months.
Yes, it has.
Congratulations all around.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to say, this is absolutely 100% a team effort. It's been, and when I say team effort, it's not just folks here that have been working towards this, but great partnerships with local developers and also with the city of Blue Ash. I think it's important, that we were all in this together. Our cities wanted us to find a place and they wanted us to find the right place. And so we think that this is a great opportunity, and as Mr. Lewis, I think, has said before, this property is actually key because it is pretty much direct center of the district. So from an operational long-term standpoint, it's a win for us overall. So excited to be able to get this and then get the bidding of the building and then hopefully get our folks in their transportation compound in July of 2020. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions from the board?
Just a comment. One of the things I really appreciate about this agreement is that we have the right to purchase at the end of 30 years at a very attractive price for the district.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's just good to have this moving forward because our transportation staff have been very patient. And they've had to make a first move in a very temporary spot. They're gonna sit there probably a little bit longer than what we had originally planned. Yep. Been
It'll be
really
worth it.
patient and
It will be.
they work well with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Allen.
All right, motion passes. Item number 7, I need a motion for the resolution of necessity Sycamore High School Tennis Court Restoration Project.
So moved.
Second.
When you have the state championship tennis team, you restore the court. That's what's possible.
But I'm gonna ask,
Yeah.
what budget is this coming from?
Yes.
So we had actually budgeted this in the capital funds for this year that was already approved. The reason we're doing the resolution of necessity, obviously, our goal is always to bring bids forward. Our goal is always to select the lowest bid and go through that lowest or most responsible bid to go through that process. We got no bids. We put it out. This is not odd. Again, we're in a very difficult situation right now, just with the labor force in general. I know another school district had the same situation. And so the reason we're bringing this forward is that our partners with Kleiningers, who has helped us through this process, they reached out to each individually and tried to understand why we couldn't get bids, or different companies is what I'm trying to say. and we found one that would be willing to come to the table. It wasn't the original price, but we were within the range of what we had budgeted. So that's why you see this, and they can get on the work as quickly as possible. I think it's
I'm
important.
confident in the quality of work.
Yeah, client jurors would not have brought forward.
He's worked for us.
Yeah,
And only at the high school, not the junior high.
correct. Yeah. I think it's important to note too, that this is just to get those two courts really fix the cracks and fix some downspout stuff. There is going to be a long-term discussion that we need to have about replacement of our tennis courts. That's not in the next 2 years or so, but we're going to have those conversations outward. Those are things that we'll have as we sit down and really talk through that capital improvement plan that we're going to be coming back to you with. I know Mr. Comerford, you had asked for that as well. So this is a good fix. It'll get us through the next few years, but it's not a long-term fix.
What's the timeline? When would you expect to start this, and will it impact women's tennis in the fall?
It's going to impact our tennis season. We've been working really closely with our coaches. Mr. Foster has been working with Mr. Harden as well to have the least impact. At the same rate, the two courts are unusable at the moment. So we have to figure this out. The other thing that we have also said to our coaches who, I get it, they want to delay it. We're not confident we can get the work done if we delay it. If we say, I'm sorry, we won't take this bid now and start the work now, we're not confident we can get them to come back in the spring to do it. So we're working closely with those folks to either find court time somewhere else, similar to what we're doing with the swimming pool, but to get this done as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Kid Power Therapy Services Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Ballard, so on these, if you have a question, I'm happy to provide Mrs. Spencer's rationale for these contracts. She apologizes, she had a family emergency and cannot be here. So I know she did provide summaries for the board, but if you need me to explain something so that our community hears it, I'm happy to do it.
All right. Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Key Behavioral Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Ohio Valley Voices.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye,
And Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the on-time Medi transport contract.
So moved.
Second.
So, Mr. Ballard, the only comment I'll make about this is just the increase in this cost is fairly significant compared to last year. It's not lost on us with fuel costs and labor force costs that would be an increase, but I will tell you that our team is concerned about this contract, and I know we've looked at, and I think, Mrs. Bitter's not here. I know that she asked a question about what's the comparison of doing it internally versus not. We've looked at that a number of times. It's whether or not we want to make a capital investment in vans and things like that, but that's if we can find people to drive them. So it's a significant issue for us because, we would love to drive everyone on our school buses or school vans if we had the personnel, but right now we're struggling to find people just to keep our buses moving. Last year, our transportation staff did not have one day that we had to cancel a route or to close, terminate a route. And I will say our colleagues in other districts were not so fortunate, but that's because Mr. Miller and Mr. Huber, all the mechanics in the office were willing to drive anytime that we needed them. So Mr. Miller, by the end of the year, I think on a daily basis rode a particular route. And, that just shows his dedication, making sure our kids get served. But to answer Mrs. Bitter's question, I just don't know that we could, even if we wanted to, would we be able to find the staffing to do it? But we're certainly not going to stop looking at this cost because it does concern me. It's grown exponentially in the last few years.
So I will mention to that point, I have been collaborating with Mrs. Spencer, but also We leverage van service outside of just special education as well for some other students in the district that are specific cases that we have to transport them outside our boundaries. We are actually there, we see some easy wins to decrease some of those costs as we look at internal structures of managing some of that. So we're going to work internally to try to think about workflow. Mr. Miller has also come to the table, as Mr. Lewis mentioned. They had done a study a few years ago to better understand how we might take some of that on internal. We're kind of dusting that off and revisiting that so that we understand what would that capital impact be. But we met actually just 2 weeks ago to have these conversations so we get a better handle on how much money is being spent. The other thing too is I've been reaching out to other districts, and we have a couple other companies that have been somewhat successful in those areas that we're going to try to connect with and see if possibly we can get better rates or better service from them.
Can you remind me how many students about this covers?
It's estimated, and again, I think it's important, I'm glad you said it like that. It's an estimated amount based on the number of students. Right now, it's estimated at 42 students, which is really high for us to have on band service, so, yeah.
So, so you're looking at other companies. Is this something that we bid out in the last 3 years, 5 years? Is there any?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Before I moved into superintendency, I did, you can, since it's a service, you don't necessarily have to bid it out. It gives you a little more flexibility to have conversations with companies instead of having a sealed bid. But I did, and this company refused to submit a bid that we're using because they recognize they're not going to be the lowest. But one of the things that we have not experienced is, or at least in recent times, we have not experienced any service deficits. When we worked with a previous company that was the low bid, we were having kids not picked up in a timely manner. Our team here was making tons of calls and, just unhappy with the service overall. So it's kind of the balance between the two of, we don't want to pay the Cadillac service, but we don't want to pay the non-reliable service for our students that need it. And they need to be able to get to their locations. So it's a balancing act, but we have looked at pricing and it didn't necessarily come back any much better than previously.
Does the county have any such service that they would consider increasing across the entire county?
It's funny you said, Dr. Shiga. The consortium has looked at this. There was a group digging into this, and I don't know if you have any. I kind of exited out as they were looking at it, but multiple districts were looking at it because they're all of us are feeling the same pinch, it's reliability and cost. And the county was looking at it at one point, but I haven't heard that it actually moved any further than just discussions. But
I think it goes back to the driver shortage, labor shortage, everything really, it's hard to own. I think our greatest opportunities are looking at processes and systems that we have internally. What possible capital outlay might be a benefit in order to decrease long-term operation. And then also, now that it's been a few years or a year or whatever, are there other companies out there that maybe have started in the industry that we can look at that I don't?
saw a bus drive by me the other day that said Miller Transportation. I thought maybe he was going on. Maybe he went out on his own, but
Looking at the costuming and people in there.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to look at the, capital outlay versus operating expenditures and see if there's something we can do long-term.
Yeah, it has to be like one of those cycle things, we buy a few buses every year, we're trying to ban.
Well, and that's the other thing, not to keep going on with this, but finding vans right now, even if we wanted to buy some, we wouldn't be able to.
Right.
So it's
No drivers,
no drivers, no vans, so it'd be a 12-month wait.
Okay, any additional questions? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss. Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the contract with behavior intervention and consulting.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the contract with Warren County Educational Service Center.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the job description revision.
So moved.
Second.
The only comment I'll make about it, you may recall that Sally Hayes, who's worked as the parent resource coordinator, that was the formerly titled position, is retiring, and we wish her well. Mrs. Spencer and her team have looked at it and just, they think this is a value to our district, but they also believe that there may be some grant funding to help offset those costs, so that at this time, she's put Sycamore on the waiting list for this grant to be able to supplement, but it wouldn't be any additional necessarily cost associated with this. It would be a like for like. But it's been historically around 20 hours per week, and basically the requirements for a candidate for this position, it's a Sycamore parent of a student with a disability. Be able to help make those connections for parents.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of job description new.
So moved.
Second.
So believe it or not, as a ticket manager, and I'll let others jump in, but Mr. Causey, if you've not ever met Mr. Causey, he's been basically our ticket manager for a long period of time. And so at some point, we're going to try to figure out how long that's been, because we'd like to recognize him in front of the board. But it's been a stipend that he's done this for every one of our sports for, I think someone set it up meeting 45 years.
Wow.
He was doing it when I started.
That's what Beth said, that he's been doing it.
Yeah, I've been here 45
I heard it at a whole.
Thirty, but I figured he'd do it.
I think it's 45 years. Like, I feel like he deserves something. like
Absolutely.
Special recognition, so we'll figure something out, because that's incredible.
Yeah.
To
Can
do
you train the
this,
next person?
yes, and I think, he saw his time to get out, because he really enjoyed working with Clark, and he's like, Clark's out, I'm out, I'm gonna jump out of this, so. But there was no job description in place, so we want to bring a new job description that's more reflective of the duties of the position. And thank you, Dr. Davis and Mr. Weber, for getting this together and putting it into place.
I have an annual discussion with Mr. Causey, like, come on, John, one more year, you and I can do this, we can do it. 'Cause he's probably one of the first people that I met outside of the board and administration when I came to the district. But, just organizing the people who are working the gates. It used to be counting the cash. Now he moved into working with all of our online ticketing and lots of different ways of being able to actually not have physical tickets at the booths. So, he's really changed as we've needed him to with the job as well. And I will truly miss him, because we usually have a right before school starts meeting and a right after school ends meeting, just to kind of talk about the year. This year was a little hard.
Make sure you get him back in front of you for better recognition.
Okay, Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the purchase authorization for score vision.
The contract.
I'm sorry, Ms. Moon. I need a motion for approval first for the contract with Positive Education Program.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger.
Aye.
And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. Now I need a motion for the approval of the purchase authorization with score vision.
So moved.
Well, I feel like I've done so much talking, so I didn't know if Mrs. Weber would like to share some love this evening and kind of give an overview of this one. We've done so much work on it, but I can kind of give high level, and then Ms. Weber, if you want to kind of just be my assist. I'm going to do my best to try to cover high level how all these parties work together, just for a little bit of clarity. And I also want to reference an email that you had received back when we were doing the power out agreement, and there was discussion with the board in regards to how do these play together. And I kind of outlined this as well. So Score Vision is the company that we leverage for the design, the fabrication of the scoreboard. They're the company that we have been working with. It is ready to go. It's going to be out there on the field per this approval. PowerAd is a separate company. PowerAd is a company that we have historically worked with here in the district. They work with a lot of organizations, specifically schools. Their job is to hit the pavement out in the community to raise funds and sell ads for the school board. And so for our scoreboard, that specifically looks like static ads, but also digital ads as well. The agreement with PowerAd is that they would go out, they would do the work in raising the money, and then they work directly with Score Vision to buy the scoreboard. The benefit to us as a district to leverage a company like PowerAd is that, number one, they're doing a lot of the groundwork, engaging with our community to get those ads. The two, they also work with the legality on the back end of the contracts with these companies, ensuring that they're up to date each year, they're visited, and they also front money as well. So they act somewhat similar to like a bank. So say a company says we're willing to be an ad up on your scoreboard, we're going to give you, let's just say $30,000 over the course of 3 years. They own that money, they work with Score Vision to pay that board off. In our contract, the way it was written, it does state in there that if the money isn't raised, the company, in which would be PowerAd, has the discretion of when the board actually gets put up. In the midst of that, they gave us a call a few weeks ago. Well, I sent an email that I discovered and was able to get to kind of see what was going on. And in that email, they had basically said that they haven't had the success what they thought they would have. As you know, we live in a community that has a lot of corporations, a lot of companies, and a lot of very willing investors in the schools. They were shocked that they weren't able to get nearly what they thought they could get. They have raised so far $30,000 approximately towards the board, but they didn't feel as if they would be able, within the 2-month time frame that they had, to be able to fund the scoreboard. In a separate conversation that we had with Score Vision, you know, they've been great partners. Again, they're the ones providing the board, working with PowerAd and us. They've been very, very good to us, but they also are at the point where they need to install the board. They need to put it up, they need to get it out there, so they need their money. So through a lot of different conversations and a lot of tough conversations around why are we where we are right now, I think it comes down to, you know, Ms. Weiss, the conversations we continue to have, right? That tension point that exists between, we got to open this thing for the game versus the long-term play and what's the best use of funds and things like that. That's what we wrestle with. We need a scoreboard to start the season. What we want to do on the back end is continue to have conversations, because what's happening now per your approval is that there's no relationship between PowerAd and Score Vision anymore from our standpoint. Because if we're investing the funds for the scoreboard, we're working directly with PowerAd in order to reimburse the funds that the district is outlaying for that board. I personally, I know Mark Harden, I've had many conversations with Mark about this because he's the one that has historically owned the relationship with PowerAd and worked this agreement and brought it to the board. I know that we are 100% committed to that being the case, that this money be reimbursed to the district. I know that Mrs. Weber and I and others have sent PowerAd companies that they need to engage with, and they have, and it has resulted in potential money that could come. And when I say potential, it's because we don't have a signature on the line to get that money. And so I guess I say all that to say, this is not something that we wanted to bring to you at all. It's not something historically the district, through their relationship with PowerAd, has ever had to do. They have been a great partner in the past. And I don't want to say they're a bad partner. I think it's unfortunate how this unfolded. It was a short time frame. The other thing I think I'll close on, and I'll give it over to Mrs. Weber to add anything, 'cause she's been lock arm with me in these conversations, is that we also know, again, Score Vision has told us this, Power Ad, but also just others anecdotally we've talked to. It's hard to sell ads on something that doesn't exist. If we were to go sell ads at the junior high, people have a visual of where the stands are, of how big the scoreboard is, of the impact it has, where it's situated. People can't visualize our stadium now, and so when we talk about selling ads, they can't visualize the scoreboard, even though we may have an image. Well, where is it located? How many eyes will be on it? There's a lot of confidence that once the board is up, that the sales of the ads are going to go much quicker. Because again, there's context around it, where it's at, the visual, the relationship to the high school, Cornell Road, and those kinds of things, so.
I think you've done a really good job of covering what has occurred. I think I just also want to jump in on the commitment that we are going to work really hard to make sure that any funds of the board funds for the scoreboard purchase are reimbursed to the district. So we've already started to reach out to some of, not necessarily our vendors, but some companies that we have relationships with that we know have a lot of benefit from being located in our district. And we think benefit from the advertising. I think that is part of it with the visualization, because most of them are like, I just kind of need to see what this is going to look like. So that is one of the first questions out of the gate.
And we've never had digital advertisements as well, so that's something new. So understanding how that looks at a game, how that looks at other points, you know, if there's practices out there, things like that that we have to demonstrate.
Will this look like an annual revenue stream for the ads? Will this be something that we get monies in year on year for?
So based on the contract, and this is where we have been going through the contract with a fine tooth comb to really understand, because I do believe now that we're owning the relationship with Score Vision and we're fronting this money, that we will be having a conversation with Power Ad, because the way it basically works is that Power Ad will sell the ads to cover the cost of the board. Then in addition to that, there is a percentage that they make based on future ad sales. Okay, so ongoing revenue. So if there's a minimal number that we have to sell in order to get the board covered, and then if they sell future digital advertisements, more A-frame, which are kind of those padded things that go around the field, there's a split depending on the type of advertisement it is that we get as somewhat quote unquote as a fundraising model, and they get for doing the legwork to get their sponsors.
I would just maybe one more comment. Well, this is not what we would have expected or wanted. When I thought about this, it's not too dissimilar than what we have from UC Health, where we have cash flows in the future for expenses that we have today. If this is going to yield cash flows for the future in terms of advertising revenue, I don't see this as much different than the revenue that we had as part of the athletic complex of the 5.9 million, which was coming into us over the next X number of years that we paid for, if you will, upfront, and then we're getting that revenue stream in the future. This is not what I expected from this, but I don't think it's unprecedented for what we've done already for the athletic complex.
I would just add though, Mr. Comerford, I do agree with you, but the UC Health money, the sponsorship is guaranteed. There's no guarantee that we get the $765,000. I look at it this way. You know, I think that the board is being put between a rock and a hard place. Number one, we need a scoreboard to open the stadium, and number two, we have contractual obligation to Score Vision. So, you know, that being said, my disconnect here is the Power Ads. I think it was a colossal failure of Power Ads. They knew the time frame going in. Okay, so they didn't miss it by 20,000. They completely missed it. 30,000 of 165,000 is not even in the ballpark in my mind. You know, while I don't have a problem, I have a problem, but like I said, we're between a rock and a hard place with the approval of the funds. My issue is, do we need to continue doing business with Power Ads? Why should we move forward with a company? Because there's plenty of other companies out there that can do this. we're putting the money up front already, so it's not like we're getting the money from Power Ads to do this. I would challenge you to look at the contract with Power Ads and see if it's a company we even want to do business with.
I would agree with you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
would say too, I appreciate Mr. Kama for your comments and kind of framing it in a different way than I was thinking about it today, maybe when I was talking to Mr. Lovell about it, because Mr. Ballant, you're correct. We have to, I would say we have to vote yes to approve the money to pay Score Vision for the board that they have designed and fabricated, and we need to get that installed. I guess I think about Power Ad, and I'm wondering what level of expertise and experience they're bringing in that they engaged in a contract to get the $171,000 for the scoreboard met in 2 months or 3 months, or however many months they've had to do it. And now it's like, ooh, we can't do it. It's hard out there. And the time and expertise of the staff of our district that is giving them leads to then fulfill that $171,000, where I would say, I would have hoped that maybe those leads would have come after the $171,000 would have been fulfilled by the expertise of Power Ad going to their people to get, to get ads for that scoreboard. And then we would, as I understand it, we would be getting a cut of some of that advertising revenue, correct? And so I would say, I mean, I don't know what the contract looks like with Power Ad, but and I'll say if they're in breach of contract, but what is our position then? Like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't fulfill it. I'm really sorry. Is that kind of how it is? Like they just try their best, and if they don't need it, it's just like we say, that's okay, we're gonna front the money.
The language
is
is,
that-
yeah, pretty much. I mean, and that's what I
Because
indicated.
we own the board. I mean, we will.
That's exactly right. Every comment that you have made are what we have asked ourselves. And that's why I indicated that our next step is to go back to Power Ad and have a really tough conversation about the agreement. I do want to just, Mr. Comfort, you had mentioned, kind of the model of future revenue. They have done that for us. We've worked with them for our interior athletics, scoreboards, on the scores table and things like that. And there's money that they have as ongoing support to the district athletics. This was a big thing, and there was a big miss on this one. And what I told our rep from Power Ad the other day is that we obviously have to move forward. I have to go to the board, but after the board meeting, we're going to need to have a conversation. They're waiting for that
I
conversation.
think it's I think you can let them know that the board and the administration believe it was a big enough miss that we may not be able to do business with people. I think unless they're gonna rectify it quickly, I think that's what I hear from our board, and I know that we feel the same way, that it might be a big enough miss that, I'm sorry, we won't be doing business with you after this transaction.
I would say also, if I could just add one other piece of this, is I do think that we internally, Mr. Lewis, you specifically need to think about who is managing that relationship, whether it's with them or some other vendor, because I think that this was a miss again. This was a miss that it maybe wasn't being kind of monitored closely enough. And I think we do need to probably take some responsibility with that relationship with Power Ad, that maybe we weren't watching as closely as we thought. Now, if we had a history, if we do have a history with them, you mentioned Mr. Harden having a history with them, that's great, but maybe in the future, we need to have, more updates weekly, not weekly, but monthly, something like that. So we know that we're on track and we're not put in this situation again.
I think it is important, thank you for those comments, and I do think it's important to recognize too that the $30,288 and then the potential $47,300, that money is being fronted by Power Ad. They have not collected all those dollars. So if we were to dissolve the agreement or have those hard conversations, go with a different company, there is a conversation around how we give those funds back to them. Does that make sense?
I don't think we're talking about dissolving this contract.
No, but
There won't
future.
be any future contract.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear that
They need
they
to
are
meet
fronting
their-
money for us.
In my
at the
mind,
moment.
they need to meet their obligation, whether it be, they didn't meet their timeline, it isn't a get out of jail free card. I think that's the next conversation with our attorney present is you need to meet your obligations in the contract you signed versus, well, we just couldn't do it, we're out. And I know we'll have some additional conversations, but I think I hear the direction from the board, which is we we're going to approve this, but our expectation from a school board level is to recoup these funds as quickly as possible and hold power out of county, and we will do that.
And I would add on top of that, I'd like to, sometimes when you're dealt a lemon, figure out how to make lemonade. If we can turn this into a revenue stream for ourselves going forward, where we don't owe a cut to power ads, we can work with someone else and get the advertising dollars 100% for the district. I mean, if this opens the door for that opportunity, then that's the challenge I would have. Let's find a way to make this a positive for the district.
Any additional questions? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Stuker. Aye. Mrs. Weiss. And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. Mr. Lewis.
Just for the essence of time, I'll just say, went to see Disney Descendants on Saturday afternoon, and it was awesome. So congratulations to Mr. Waffle and all of our students and families that went. And I saw a lot of kids dressed up while they were watching Disney Descendants. So, and I should say a big shout out to Mr. Lovell and the entire facilities team for allowing that to happen in the middle of an active construction site. So
We have a very passionate theater department that we're happy to support.
And they did a good job. They do an outstanding
They
job.
do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah.
I need a motion for the approval of the treasurer's consent agenda.
Second.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Weber.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Stuker. Aye. And Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes. Mrs. Weber, fiscal year and update.
Thank you, everyone. If you, for your attention, we'll try to make this as quick as possible. Yet another school year, and just wanting to provide an update. Some of this you've heard already as we've provided updates through the year, but just to give you an overview on financial status for our general fund, take a little bit of a more in-depth look at what we always do or typically do for our bond retirement, child nutrition, bond issue fund, and then federal COVID fund, and then just a few quick department updates of things that occurred within the treasurer's department in this past year. And the next slide. First of all, our general fund revenue, just about a little over $88 million. That was actually an increase of about 130,000 from fiscal year 22, but it was a significant increase for what we had planned when we went into the year, about 1.8 million more than what we had originally planned for this school year, primarily because of some of the impact of the state, new funding sources from the state with the new budget, and then also another big impact was funds that are coming through for our TIF agreements with our cities. So that was the primary reason for that income, that impact. Just kind of going through our main buckets of funds that come into the district, primarily real estate revenue that did, as we reported in past board meetings, decreased by about 300,000 from last year. That was based on having quite a few funds from our real estate taxes that reduced federal revenue. It's a kind of a one-time thing with that occurring. We wanted to talk a little bit about our state funding dollars. One of the things that was included in the new state budget was an increase in the funds available for what's called catastrophic aid for our students with disabilities. It's a allocation within the state budget that you are allowed to submit for reimbursement costs of some of our most highest needs students, whose cost of educating them and allowing them and being able to provide access to our schools is really costly. They increased that pot of money available at the state by almost double this year, and what it helped us with is we can save about $300,000. In prior years, we got about
$560,000, so a significant increase. I'd like to just thank both our staff and the Office of Student Services, as well as Amy Moore, the Assistant Treasurer, for going through all the work that it takes to get that reimbursement, because it is a lot of work, but it definitely is one of those things that we will continue to take advantage of.
Mrs. Roper, can I ask a quick question just about that? Is that just for educational, like educational components for those high need students with disabilities, or could some of that apply to any other part of like getting the students here? Like physically getting the students into our buildings?
We do provide a transportation component.
Okay,
So it's really anything that allows our students to have access to our curriculum is what it's eligible for. And it even includes a part of looking at the costs of like being able to be included in the regular education program. So it's a pretty significant program, and the state requires a lot of information, but it really is great to have that kind of support to give our kids the supports that they need.
Thank you.
So, overall, this was also the new foundation formula from the state budget that went into effect for this school year. We saw about $160,000 increase in funding from that, which was about what we had expected. And great news, I guess, casino revenue is back from pre-pandemic, so all that's good stuff. TPP reimbursement, which is our tangible personal property tax reimbursement for those funds lost years ago. When we started this out, we brought in $12 million into the district. This was the final year that it was out, so that revenue source, the last $1 million we collected, that's finally gone, unfortunately. And then the TIF funds, which is our tax increment financing agreements with our cities. We're beginning to realize revenue from the Summit Park development, along with some of the others within the district. So that brought in about $700,000 more than what we had received in the prior year. We'll keep looking at that revenue source because we have not even started to receive any dollars from the Montgomery quarter, which is the large development that is right when you come into the gateway of Montgomery. So all good news moving forward as well. Okay, next slide. All right, just an overall of our general fund expenditures. In the past, we've had, our 5-year parameters. In keeping with that, we had about a 2.5% increase included in our FY22 forecast. So we have projected expenses this year, and that includes operating expenses plus some dollars that we transferred from our bond, from our general fund to pay for bonds for energy conservation, as well as the district office certificates of participation. We had, with that cap, looked at almost about 84.2 million. Our actual results were right around 84 million. So we spent about $200,000 less than the cap. Just to give you an idea, right now, we are, this past year, nearly $1 million went for energy conservation bonds, and all that has basically comes back to us in savings in our energy costs that fund the repayment of those bonds. And then about 185,000 for the district office certificates of participation, which were issued back in 2010 to build this building. So I think we have maybe 5 more years on those until those will be completely paid off. So again, within the budget cap, within that 2.5% chart. Next slide. Okay. On top of what we spend for those operating costs, we do provide some utilization of our general fund from our cash reserve to fund our capital improvements, as opposed to having a dedicated levy for ongoing permanent improvements. The dollars that we utilize to make sure we keep our technology up to date, and then a small amount of funding that we use to help support our athletic programs. Those dollars are not included within the financial parameters as we calculate them. We spent about $4.8 million for those this last year. In addition to $800,000 for technology, we also had some paving. Many of these things happened last summer. Bus replacement. One of the big dollar items within this was roof replacement at the high school, and I think that was the final area over the gymnasium that we wanted to get done prior to that work occurring. And then we did have a reallocation of 1.2 million from the bond issue to cover roof replacement that had occurred in past year just because of some budget pressures. Overall, if you count those, our total cost from the general fund was 88.8 million. So looking at that, we had a drawdown of our cash reserve about $200,000. So better than what we had anticipated when we started the year. We estimated that change and that drawdown would be well over $1 million. So because of those increased revenues, we were able to keep that in mind. Any questions about that? I'll move on to bond retirement funds, and I apologize, it should be the 21-22 bond retirement. These are the dollars that we collect in taxes or through federal subsidies from some programs that went into place when we issued debt for Mapledale, as well as those funds that we utilize for the energy conservation bonds. So we spent nearly $11 million on bond retirement, so paying off the district's debt last year. That would be in both paying down principal as well as interest costs associated with those bonds. Thinking back to when we approved the 2019 bond issue, we had told our district and our community members that we would not exceed 4.4 mils in property taxes used to pay off all of our debt, including the 2019, 2010, and one from 1998, no more than 4.4. In 2022, our residents of our districts are paying 4 mils. So we've been able to keep that promise. The bond rate for the 19 issue did go up a little bit in this past year. We started to see that rate go up a little bit as we were paying off other debt. And so it went from 2.4 to 2.8, but that was planned and communicated during the bond levy. And next slide. Just again, I think it's always good for us to revisit when we talk about what our residents pay in comparison to other school districts, both in Hamilton County and then also Mason and Kings, our neighboring districts. We are 21 out of 25 in our comparison group. Our residents are paying just about almost 35 mils of property tax. But for our area, it ranges anywhere from at the low end with Southwest at 26 mils all the way up to over 60 mils for Finneytown schools. And the mean for that entire group is about 43 mils. So we're well below the average for our comparison group as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, can't see this with the covering there, but this is our construction funds. We are at the point with our overall budget, we are about 93% of the funds that are set aside for all of our bond issue projects. 93% have been obligated, about 59% have actually, the cash has been expensed to pay off our contractors and our consultants who are working with us on all that. When you look at the remaining funds that are to be obligated, there's not much left anymore, and there's actually for primarily transportation facility, which is yet to be bid, as well as the natatorium project is in there. And then also, I think really on all of our building projects, about the only thing that's left that hasn't been obligated yet, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lovell, is furniture, furnishings for the high school and for the junior high. Correct. I think everything else has been obligated to this point. So exciting to be at this point in the project. Looking at that project update, when you think about where they are in terms of expenses, Sims is almost done. Green and junior high, again, are practically all obligated, but you see the remaining expenses for Green occurring this fall. Junior high has a little bit more time as well as the high school. So we're on our way to getting all of these funds utilized. Okay, any more questions? We talked a lot about the budget for the bond issue tonight. Good news on the child nutrition front. You can see that our revenue, because of the federal subsidies that supported our child nutrition plans this year, and providing free lunch and breakfast for all of our students, continued that again this year. Plus, there were some additional funds that Mrs. Warren went after to help us for the prior year. So she did a lot of work making sure that if there were funds available, we went after them. So this is a area of our budget where in a typical year, these would about break even. That's kind of our goal. So because of these additional dollars, we were able to kind of not only recuperate from the years of COVID, we were actually able to build a nice cushion in our child nutrition fund moving forward. We're hopeful that that will help us as we go back to where children who are not eligible for the free and reduced lunch program will continue to buy lunch because it's going to be discontinued for this upcoming year. So I think all of that is really good news. I know Ms. Warren and Mr. Lovell have been working on some things like some upgraded equipment and things like that, because we have that additional balance to be able to do a better job and continue to improve our operations in those areas.
And if you remember correctly too, we were able to forego any type of lunch increases due to the cash balance. I know that right now she's ordering food and inflation, her eyes are open really big right now. But she's thankful with that balance to be able to probably weather the storm pretty well this year.
Next slide. And finally, just, or I guess not finally, one more thing. A couple of updates on the COVID funds. So these are the federal funds that were used for being able to support ongoing operations, things like that during the pandemic. This year, the focus was a little bit different. The first year, it was providing the support for a lot of our virtual learning options, as well as a lot of funds that were utilized for PPE and being able to make sure that we could open our schools with additional equipment for physical distancing and things like that. This year's use of about 3.1 million, the biggest chunk of that was utilized for the COVID stipend that we provided to all staff in the district to compensate them for the additional work that they had to do to make sure that our schools could remain open, that our virtual options were robust, just a lot of extra work by our staff members. So of the 3.1, about 2 million of that went for the stipend. The remaining dollars, there was a little bit of money still for PPE for last year, but the shift really occurred to a lot of learning recovery models. And that was intentional from the Ohio Department of Education and the feds, in that we wanted to start looking at what is the learning loss of our students and how can we utilize these dollars to be able to help them regain or make up for those gaps. So summer school programs has been a big area where we've been able to provide free summer school for our students, not only last summer, but then we continued that this summer, and then some intervention services to support our students as well. So that's been the main utilization this past year. We still have about $2 million remaining, and we'll continue to work, myself, Mrs. Spencer, and Mrs. Regular, to continue to look at how do we continue to address
the learning recovery. So I think this year we're going to be looking at some mental health supports and some counseling services. And then there's always the opportunity that if there are funds that we want to go back and reimburse ourselves for prior years, we can do that as well. But I think that given where we are, I think those funds will probably be needed primarily in that learning recovery.
And do we have till the end of what time period to use the rest of that 2 million?
I think most of these funds have to be utilized by the end of the 23-24 school
No, so
year,
we've got.
but we are utilizing them as quickly as we can. So my guess would be by the end of this upcoming year, we'll have utilized most of them. Because we want to get the money to help kids
Yeah.
get back there, fill those gaps as quickly as we can. Yeah, so we'll continue to work on that. I think last year we spent almost $3 million in COVID funds. All right. Finally, just some changes in the department. One of the big things we did was a software conversion this year, changed to a new system for both our payroll and accounts payable system. So that was a major undertaking. So a big thank you to the members of my staff, and then also those who work out in the buildings who had to learn a lot of new things too. I've been utilizing that system since 1989 when I first got out of college, my first job working with it. So I have been having a lot of withdrawal issues, but they're teaching me something new every day. We did have some new team members this year. Amy Moore is our assistant treasurer, and then Patty Yu, who has come to help us really with the next item in that when we had a resignation in our registration department, what we did was we took those registration duties into our department along with Mr. Lovell's department, and did some reassigning of the duties of the accounts payable person who's doing that, plus a lot of the registration work. And then Mrs. Yu, who started working with us, is really being a great support to Mr. Lovell. So between the two of us, we found a way to restructure that position, be able to provide, I think, really good services with the skills of the people in both of our departments. And I think given us a lot better opportunity to do some cross-training and continuous learning for that group of people. So that's come into our department. We added one FTE that really is utilized by both of our departments to be able to make that work. So we said goodbye to Kathy Neuner, who was our assistant treasurer. We miss her. One of the other people that we also said goodbye to, who has provided great support to our department, is Martha Denneman, who was an associate at UH. Many of you probably don't know all the things that some of those associates do in the building beyond probably making sure the staff is taken care of and working to make sure the principal knows what he or she is doing on a daily basis. But Martha also, in our case, was the person who helped us with the purchasing, keep making sure we had the information we needed for payroll. So she was a great support out in the building for us, so we will miss her as well. So much more to come, I'm sure, in this area the upcoming year, but overall, I think we had a really successful year given all the change that we had going on as well. So, any questions?
Thank you.
No, just thank you to you and your staff. I mean, when I look at a $88 million budget, to know that you came in under, but very, very close. Every year I continue to be impressed how, you and your department keep us on budget. Everything that we have going on, so thank you.
I'd like to echo those things.
Okay, thank you very much. I need a motion for the approval of financial reports June 2022. Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Seeger. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of the 2022-23 extracurricular fees. Any questions from the board?
Is extracurricular start, what fall sports season starts in what, less than 2 weeks?
August first, I think.
I guess I would just like to point out that this is no change to 21 to 22 school year. So, Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger, aye. Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Mallon.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of personnel consent agenda, which includes addendum 1M and 3A.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Seeger, aye. Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Mallon.
Motion passes. Moving on to other Board of Education business, Mrs. Weiss.
Thanks.
legislative
I'm gonna be
liaison.
super brief tonight, a legislative liaison update. The legislature is currently on summer recess, so they're not working, not a whole lot going on there.
Has past 2 minutes yet? Oh,
Okay,
no,
we're not.
not yet.
But the State Board of Education has been busy. They've approved the following measures at its July meeting. Resolution to increase the third grade reading guarantee promotion score from 683 to 685, beginning with the 2022-23 school years. I'm sure that Mrs. Wagner and Mrs. Tompkins know about that. They also, resolution to adopt revising learning standards for computer science for grades K through 12, and a resolution to update the dyslexia guidebook as a result of law changes from House Bill 583. They also discussed a resolution to consider an upcoming meeting to hire a firm to conduct a search for the superintendent of public instruction, and we wish them all the best on that endeavor. That is all I have. Mrs. Weber, do you have anything else you'd like to add? All right, that's it for
Hopefully
me.
the one that they find will last a little bit longer.
Which is, I thought they hired a new superintendent.
Yeah, but remember my last legislative liaison update, he resigned within a week, so hopefully they'll find someone.
Okay,
That's all I
thank you to everybody for their participation. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Did you like draw the short